Now, I know I said that this table's really complicated, but the result's actually really easy. First of all, I just want to explain that when we look at the first row, it's looking at strategy 1. Provide information on the behavior to health link. When something is in the study, this yes classification, 37 studies used it, and the effect size was 0.35. When this strategy wasn't in the study, the no classification, the effect size was 0.29. The beta value tells us whether this 0.35 is different from 0.29. So when we look at the beta here, the beta is only 0.06. The confidence interval spans 0, so we know that that 0.06 statistic is not significant. As usual, the first thing we want to do is go down this list and try to identify the strategies that are significant predictors of healthy eating or physical activity. When you go down the list of betas, looking for strategies that have a significant confidence interval, that is the ones that don't include 0, you're going to have to scroll quite a way. Talking about consequences didn't work. Barrier identification didn't work. Graded tasks didn't work. Applying contingent rewards didn't work. Even suggesting that they exercise or eat healthily, that didn't work. The only significant confidence interval in this list is prompt self-monitoring of behavior. The effect size for interventions that use self-monitoring is 0.41, whereas the effect size for studies that don't use self-monitoring is only 0.26. If you continue down the list, you can see that none of the other strategies are significant predictors of healthy eating or exercise. The paper goes on to explore a number of different explanations for this and a number of different models. It tries controlling for the overlap between these different techniques. And then it tries to look at what happens if you underlie it using a theory. And in this case, they use control theory, which we'll go into a bit more detail about afterwards. The only significant way to make an intervention better than just including self-monitoring was to use self-monitoring plus one of the other interventions within control theory. These other interventions include goal setting, intention formation, review of goals, and feedback. On their own, none of those interventions did anything. But when you use self-monitoring plus these strategies, you get a really strong improvement in effect size. If you have a look at this table, we've got 0.42 is the effect size when you have self-monitoring plus another component of control theory, and only 0.26 when you don't. Just to explain some other findings of the table that we won't necessarily ask you to have to pull out yourself. They looked at the other covariates that might influence the effect of an intervention on healthy eating or physical activity. First of all, they looked at the type of the behavior, and generally, physical activity and healthy eating were affected about the same by these interventions. Then they looked at the relationship between the length of the intervention and how effective it was, and there didn't seem to be any effect of that. The correlation between the length and the effectiveness was basically 0. Then they looked at the person who was delivering the intervention, whether they were a health professional, a medical professional, or neither. And they found that there was no significant effect of any of these. It didn't matter whether the intervention was delivered by a health professional, a doctor, or anyone else. All the interventions seemed to have the same effect. They looked at the format of the intervention, whether it was individual or grouped. Again, no significant difference. They looked at the country it was in, and again, there was no significant difference. They looked at whether it was in a workplace or a community setting, and it didn't matter. The use of multiple sessions wasn't better than a single session. Disadvantaged populations were the same as high SES. Sedentary populations got the same benefit as those who were obese or normal populations. The effects were same for women and for men, and the number of techniques was not associated with the effect size. The only thing that seemed to matter when we're trying to help someone stick to a goal that they've already got is A, whether that intervention includes self-monitoring, and B, if it already includes self-monitoring, do they then set goals, review, provide feedback, and create new intentions?